The first thing I wanted to establish was that the player could affect moving parts in the dungeon. I did this by locking the player in one small room with a raised black block in the center with a decal of cracks on top. Upon standing on top of it, the block would descend to show a much larger room, acting as an elevator. In this new hall, the player can see a staircase leading up to nothing. There are two paths a player can take here. The first, from the careful player, would be to take a moment to explore the room. They would find a tunnel with a midsection that has been pushed up and is blocked by two red cylinders with targets on them. Behind them, a floating platform with no obvious way to get on top. A more active player will simply run up the stairs, a perfectly acceptable solution, as when they pass the midsection, the stairs spin around 180 degrees to face the floating platform. This has a chest on it with the gun power-up. Now the player knows two things. Black blocks with cracks can be pushed down, and there already have been two puzzles involving moving parts. If the player then notices the other platform, with the raised midsection, they will see this is also black and has cracks. However, once stepped on, nothing will happen. This is the first real puzzle of the level. Here the player is forced to think laterally, and understand that sometimes prerequisites must be met before the path is open. And so they will hopefully manage to figure out that the big red target looking things should be shot, giving way for the black block to fall once stood upon. This opens the way to the next section. The rotating chassis is the main feature of this dungeon. From the top level there is simply a platform around the center where the player may fall wherever they wish. In the middle section the player will notice NWES signs and should understand that, combined with the map they have on their screen, it's here to help them orient themselves. As they shoot the middle cylinder, they notice that these cubes remain static while the whole middle section turns, including the staircases. In the middle is another black falling block, and if they look down through the hole, they may see a large frog protecting a chest. This, in the player's eyes, is a clear goal to aim towards, and yet by falling down the player is killed and brought back to the last checkpoint. And so the player is invited to formulate a plan. The player is supposed to jump down from the top into a blocked off room. Here I quickly introduce a new mechanic. Shooting through fire will result in an inflammatory projectile that can be used to burn the foliage that was previously blocking the way. Now, the player can descend the staircase and access either Room 1 or Room 2 depending on the orientation of the chassis. Room 1 is the jumping puzzle. This is a very simple puzzle that requires the player simply to figure out which button raises and lowers what platforms. Their objective is a hole at the top of the room, though I have observed most players simply taking the moving platforms as an indication that they must go up, and therefore take it on faith that this is where they should go. They will notice that each button affects two platforms. To reinforce the player's forethought, I start the level by hiding the button behind another platform. The player cannot simply stand on the first platform and hit the button. They must first move the block by hitting another button and then trying it. This simple strategy has no fail states, but should communicate to the player that they need to be careful about how they navigate the puzzle, as they may find themselves with no way to reach the next button. The idea is that they know they have to jump from platform to platform, but they have to figure out what the next step is. Unlike the previous room, this isn't about figuring out where or what to do next, but to find the way forward. The player has an opportunity to test the mechanics at both entrances of the room. There is one button and two platforms that switch directions. Anyway, once the player has practiced enough, they are free to navigate the relatively linear obstacle course once they reach the top. I placed walls to reduce the amount of noise the player will be able to see at any given time. Now the player has reached their goal, but they can't kill the frog just yet. The pistol doesn't work. They will see, however, what was blocking the black falling block. 4 shots with the gun will remove the obstacles, and the player has no choice but to navigate the way they came. This will force the player to do the puzzle they skipped on their way here. Either way, each puzzle must be solved properly at least once. Once back at the central chassis, the player can stand on the black block and see it fall on the frog's head, giving access to the chest. As they pick up the hookshot, the other rooms are blocked, and the player must figure a way out. Once the player is out, they may be in an orientation that faces room 3, a room that has so far been blocked by a pesky wall of fire. One thing they may not have noticed before, however, is the presence of a hookable block on the other side. There is a lot of information to take in now. A red platform stuck behind a turbine with a red center, a big central pillar with foliage on it, and a black block on top. There are turbines across a big wall of fire and a platform that seems unreachable on the end. There are many elements to take in here, and difficulty has indeed raised. Once they will naturally shoot the red target objects, as they have been taught to do from the start, they will notice that the platform falls and a turbine disappears. However, the turbines in the distance are not red in the middle, they are green. So far, green has been the color of points of interest, and also of platforms. By standing on the turbine, it stops turning, and once exited, they begin to turn again after a delay. They will hopefully also have gained access to the church room, room 4. In this room there are some enemies to dispatch, and a continuation of those red lines that come from tunnels in the walls. These are visible from a platform that leads back into room 3. From here, the player has a good vantage point through the fire to shoot the foliage. This is a blockage that will make it possible for the black block to fall down, and they need to only figure out how to get above. By using the central chassis, they can navigate to this top room and fall on the black block, creating a passageway. Hooking their way back up, they may now shoot a platform spawner to use in the puzzle. The way to solve this puzzle is by standing on the turbines, so that they stay still long enough for the platform to move through. Once through, the player must shoot the corner boxes to realign the tracks so that the platforms will arrive safely at the destination. The puzzles continued in room 4. In room 4, one big entrance is blocked by a frog with a big tongue that suspiciously stops below the red line. If the previous puzzle was done correctly, a platform should now be looping around this area, ready for the player to shoot and land directly on the tongue, dispatching the frog. As the difficulty progresses, I simply increase the number of enemies and introduce a ranged variant. In the arena section, the player must navigate through walls by using their hookshot, and will hopefully have found enough practice for the boss level. Once the arena is completed, one big button will reveal itself, and pressed, a secret roof compartment will open up in the central chassis. This final boss is actually relatively easy to defeat, and makes use of all the things you've learned so far. The boss frog will spin around until the player is in their line of sight. At this moment, after a short delay, a barrage of projectiles will shoot at the player, reducing their health. The player can shoot them out to stun the boss momentarily, though they will not have that much time, and may still be caught in the frog's view. The best way to avoid it is to hook onto a raised platform, which spins around according to the middle chassis' orientation. That means that the player must shoot the central cylinder to spin this around to where they want it to be. This is important, as the second stage of the boss spawns 2 walls that spin around alongside them. The player must be careful not to be caught within this, by either outrunning the frog's vision or using the hookable platform. The way to actually damage the frog is through a target on its back, which must be hit 4 times. Doing so will end the level in victory.